Any taxi driver who's worked the graveyard shift will tell you, late at night, you're not always picking up people. I used to think that was just a joke. Then I became a late-night bus driver myself. After I stopped for a woman clutching a child and begging for help, I started to question everything I knew about the world. 10 years ago, the economy tanked and the company I worked for went belly up. Just like that, I was one of the millions out of job. To make ends meet, I had no choice but to move back to my hometown and take a job as a bus driver. The night shift, to be specific. It paid an extra $2,000 a month compared to the day shift. Besides, the day drivers had to run multiple routes, while the night shift was just one run to Y Village and back. 2 hours tops. Back then, Y Village was a tiny, remote hamlet on the outskirts of the city. The only reason a bus route even existed was because the village was mostly home to elderly folks living alone. The city was running some kind of civic beautification and public welfare campaign, so they set up this route to help the seniors sell their homegrown produce in the city and supplement their incomes. The route only ran twice a day, once at 4 p.m. and once at 4 a.m. I was on the 4 a.m. run. When I was hired, the woman in HR handed me a little red good luck charm to hang in the bus. She looked at me, hesitating like she wanted to say more. I took the charm. "What is it?" She thought for a moment. "Do you believe in, ghosts?" "Ghosts?" I laughed. Being broke is a lot scarier than any ghost. That night, I drove my first shift. I never could have imagined it would be the beginning of a nightmare. The route to Y Village was desolate. They'd paved it with cement, but it was still a mess of potholes. The road was flanked by dense, silent woods, and it even passed through a section I can only describe as Cemetery Road. And I mean that literally. The whole area had been designated as a graveyard. Tombstones dotted the landscape, their surfaces catching the moonlight with a faint, cold glint. I don't believe in ghosts, but driving through there, I couldn't help but feel a chill. I subconsciously reached out and touched the bright red good luck charm hanging from the rearview mirror, trying to calm my nerves. I forced myself to stare straight ahead, praying to get to Y Village as fast as possible. At the end of Cemetery Road was a fork. I needed to turn left, but as I made the turn, my headlights landed on a figure. It was a woman standing right in the middle of the road. Her long hair drifted in the night breeze, and she seemed to be holding a baby. The sight was utterly terrifying. I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding. Sticking my head out the window, I yelled, "Are you trying to get yourself killed? What are you doing standing in the middle of the road?" Waves of fear washed over me. If I'd been a second slower, I would have killed someone. In response to my shouting, the woman just looked at me, still clutching the infant. In the moonlight, I could see her face. She was pretty, with a nice figure, the very picture of a young mother. But something was wrong. She was soaking wet. It wasn't raining, but she was drenched from head to toe, water dripping onto the pavement below. "Are you heading to the city?" I asked. She shook her head stiffly. "I'm going back to the village." Her voice was hollow, as if coming from far away, yet it also felt like she was whispering right in my ear. A shiver went down my spine, but looking at the lone mother and her child, I opened the bus doors. "Get on. Which stop do you need?" The woman didn't answer. She just walked onto the bus, leaving a trail of wet footprints behind her. I closed the doors, feeling a strange sense of unease. Maybe it was because of Cemetery Road, or maybe it was a shock of her sudden appearance. But I couldn't shake the feeling of a chill crawling up my back. I turned on the radio, hoping the noise would give me some courage, but the route was so remote there was no signal. A news broadcast crackled in and out. I drove toward Y Village, only half listening to the static-filled report. The final stop was Y Village, so I naturally assumed that's where she was going. But as we passed a thicket of woods, she suddenly called out, "Stop here." Startled, I hit the brakes and looked around. "It's nothing but trees out here. You want to get off here? Open the door." Her voice was cold, her eyes fixed on the woods. The baby in her arms had suddenly stopped crying. Worried about them, I tried to reason with her. "This area is too remote. It's not safe for you to get off here." "Open the door," she repeated, cutting me off. I had no choice. I opened the door and let her off. She stepped out, holding her baby, and walked straight into the dark woods. After a few steps, she turned back, her face deathly pale. "Where's my child?" "What?" I was completely baffled. "Give me back my child," she demanded, her eyes empty and staring. I started to get angry. "Are you crazy? You're holding your baby right now." She stiffly looked down at the child in her arms and then, suddenly, smiled. On her pale face, the smile was terrifying. I watched, frozen, as she started humming a lullaby, gently rocking the baby as she walked deeper into the trees. Soon, her figure vanished into the darkness, and the world fell silent again. I started the engine. Just then, I glanced at the rearview mirror and my eyes widened in horror. The wet footprints the woman had left on the bus floor. They were gone, completely gone. How was that possible? Even under a scorching sun, a puddle of water wouldn't disappear that quickly. An icy gust of wind blew past me from behind. Terrified, I slammed my foot on the gas and sped away from Cemetery Road. The entire drive, I was on edge. The image of that woman burned into my mind. I don't know how long it took, but I drove the rest of the way to Y Village in a daze. It wasn't until a few of the elderly villagers boarded, their cheerful chatter filling the bus, that my heart finally started to settle. It must have been first-day jitters. I was just seeing things. I desperately tried to convince myself. Once the villagers were on board, I started the drive back to the city. As we passed that same patch of woods, the faint light of dawn was filtering through the trees. The woman seemed like nothing more than a bad dream. By the time the sun was up, the city was already bustling. I dropped the passengers off at the market. When I finally got the empty bus back to the depot, I felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion and dread. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was cold and heavy on my back. Seeing me return, my boss walked over, a friendly smile on his face. But his words seemed to carry a hidden meaning. "Hey Leo, you're back. First day go okay? Didn't run into anything unusual, did you?" The woman's face flashed in my mind. I felt a chill. "Why do you ask?" My boss just chuckled. "No reason. Just worried you might not be used to the night shift. Flipping your whole schedule around is tough." His words seemed innocent enough, but I felt like he was hiding something. Was working nights really such a big deal for a young guy like me that he had to ask about it specifically? But he had already walked off, thermos in hand, so I couldn't press him. After a quick breakfast, I dragged my tired body back to the dorm to get some sleep. I fell into a restless, hazy dream. I dreamt of the woman. She floated toward me, her face a ghostly white. Her bloodless lips moved, endlessly whispering the same phrase. "Help me. Help my baby." She looked nothing like the woman from last night. Her body was swollen, her skin rotting in patches, with bloody fluid seeping from the decay. Her eyes, which should have been bright, were weeping crimson tears. She looked like a vengeful spirit. I watched in terror as she drifted closer, her face flickering, each flicker bringing her nearer. I tried to run, but my legs were frozen in place. I could only watch helplessly as she approached. I shot up in bed, gasping for air, my whole body drenched in sweat. It took me a moment to realize it was just a dream. As I was about to lie back down, I heard a news report from a radio in the dorm. On the afternoon of the 16th, a woman's body was discovered in the West River. The victim's identity is currently being confirmed. The preliminary cause of death is believed to be suicide by drowning. In that instant, I couldn't get the woman's face out of my head. I was on edge all day. By the time I felt a little better, it was almost dusk. Night was falling, and I had to go to work. Same route to Y Village. Same drive through Cemetery Road. Would I see her again? Was she a person or a ghost? Was this just a nightmare born from my fear? Or was I really being haunted? I didn't know, but one thing was certain. I was too scared to go back to work. But it was only my second day. If I quit now, especially for a ridiculous reason like being afraid of ghosts, I'd be a laughingstock. So, I had to force myself to go. Maybe it was just my imagination. Tonight, when I drive through Cemetery Road, I absolutely will not stop. I try to hype myself up as I headed to the cafeteria for dinner. As night deepened, the day shift drivers started clocking out. But I couldn't help but feel that as they handed off their duties, they were all looking at me with a strange, knowing expression, like they were admiring my courage. I felt like I was sitting on pins and needles, a mix of anticipation and terror about the upcoming shift. I was desperate to prove it was all in my head, but terrified that it was all real, that I had actually met a ghost. Before leaving, I downloaded a few upbeat, cheerful songs to my phone, hoping they'd help me keep my nerve on the road. Finally, it was time to go. The early morning sky was starless and moonless. The route to Y Village was so remote, it didn't even have streetlights. My only illumination came from the bus's headlights. I drove out of the city and pushed onward. As I approached Cemetery Road, I silently prayed, "Please don't be there. Please don't be there." The fork in the road was just ahead. If I could just get past this spot, I could convince myself last night was all a delusion. Please don't be there. Please don't be there. But she was there. The woman was standing in the middle of the road, holding her baby, blocking my path just like the night before. I was so terrified, I slammed my foot on the accelerator instead of the brake. The bus shot forward. The front of the bus hit her, but there was no impact. The bus didn't slow down at all, it just kept surging forward. I panicked. When I finally came to my senses, I saw a massive tree directly in front of me. If I hit it, I was dead. I yanked the steering wheel hard, barely swerving around the tree. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the road behind me was empty. The woman was gone. She had vanished into thin air. My fear intensified. I floored it, desperate to get away from there. This was too much. I made up my mind. As soon as I got back, I was telling the boss I couldn't do the night shift anymore. I'd rather make less money than gamble with my life. But just as I started to calm down, I heard it. The sound of a baby crying from behind me. Faint at first, then getting closer and closer. Suddenly, a cold, damp breath tickled the back of my neck. The baby's cooing was right next to my ear. My eyes widened in terror. I didn't dare turn around. All I could do was scream. And in that moment, I saw something horrifying in my rearview mirror. The woman I had just hit was now sitting in the last row of seats, staring at me with a sinister, chilling gaze. And behind me, a baby was clinging to my back. Its eyes were red, and its wailing mouth had no tongue. My scream tore through the night. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I stomped on the gas pedal with all my might. The bus lurched forward, and the inertia threw me back against the seat. But I saw her, the woman, sitting perfectly still, unmoving. And the sound of the baby crying on my back never stopped. Tears streamed down my face. I'd pissed myself. I don't know if it was sheer terror or a primal survival instinct, but I let go of the steering wheel and swung my hands behind me, trying to grab it. But my hands grabbed nothing. They passed right through the baby's body. Every hair on my body stood on end. My scalp tingled with fear. Just then, the bus passed the same patch of woods where the woman had gotten off the night before. The woman spoke. "Stop here." Her voice was hollow and distant, but it felt like she was whispering right in my ear, sending shivers all over my body. I don't know when, but the baby was no longer on my back and was back in the woman's arms. I instinctively hit the brakes. Before the door even opened, the woman's figure was already outside the bus. Then, she vanished into the vast darkness. I don't know how long I sat there, stunned. By the time I regained my senses, I had somehow, on pure instinct, driven to the entrance of Y Village. The villagers were already there, bustling about with their baskets of vegetables, and they began to board. An old woman smiled at me. "Working late is tough, isn't it, young man? Your face is so pale. You have to take care of yourself, even when you're young. I think you're the 6th or 7th new driver we've seen this month." I managed a weak, awkward smile, not knowing what to say. I couldn't very well tell her that I, and probably all the others, had seen a ghost. Having people on the bus with me helped me regain some composure. I drove back to the city. When I returned to the depot, the first thing I did was find my boss. "I can't drive this bus anymore." I slammed the keys onto his desk. He sat there with his thermos, silent for a moment, then asked, "Why not?" "I just can't. I'm not cut out for this kind of money." With that, I turned and walked away, not caring what he thought. I was a wreck, my mind a storm of anger and confusion. I couldn't shake the feeling that my boss knew something but was deliberately keeping me in the dark. As I was passing the dorm building, I ducked into the little convenience store on the corner to buy a pack of cigarettes, hoping it would help me calm down. As I was paying, the owner smiled at me. "Hey, you're the new guy, right?" "Yeah, I mumbled, my mind elsewhere. Your wife is gorgeous. The company doesn't mind you bringing your wife and kid to work? The owner said, his tone a little suggestive. What wife and kid? I didn't get it first. The owner pointed to my side. Isn't that your wife and kid right there? Man, you're a lucky guy. Found yourself a real looker. Wife, kid, woman, baby. A wave of icy coldness shot up my spine. My head started to buzz. Sir, I could hear my own voice trembling. Did you really see? I wanted to ask if he really saw them, but the confused look on his face told me he wasn't joking. There was someone next to me. No, not someone. Something. My heart, which had just started to calm down, began to race again. My blood ran cold. Why? What had I done wrong? How'd I get tangled up with something like this? Under the owner's bewildered gaze, I stumbled out of the store. The morning sun was shining, but I couldn't feel an ounce of its warmth. I couldn't go back to the dorm. The thought of being alone with this thing, I was sure it would kill me. What was I supposed to do? This was all so unbelievable. Who could I possibly turn to for help? After a long moment, I thought of my boss. I immediately turned and hurried back to his office. What is it? He asked, seeing me return. He seemed a little annoyed, which was fair, considering how I'd just thrown the keys at him. I stood there, my face pale, trying to figure out how to start. But he just looked me over and suddenly asked, You didn't really see something, did you? My head snapped up. I stared at him. You know something, don't you? Sigh. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it. As he exhaled a cloud of smoke, his voice sounded weary. It's not just you. The last few guys on the night shift. They all saw her. His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I was furious. But before I could even get angry, I glanced to the side. There was a mirror in the office. In the reflection, a woman in a white dress stood to my right, holding a baby. As I looked at the mirror, she looked back, her eyes meeting mine. My hair stood on end. Who is she? I asked, my voice trembling as I fought back the terror. I don't know. My boss shook his head. I didn't believe him for a second. I kept my eyes locked on him. Truthfully, I was too afraid to look anywhere else, terrified of meeting the woman's gaze again. He silently finished his cigarette without another word. Finally, he just said, I'll switch you to the day shift. Take a couple of days off, rest up, don't overthink it, and don't quit just yet. Give a few more days. Of course I refused. My voice shook with a terror I hadn't realized was there. But she's attached to me. When I said that, I clearly saw a flash of panic on his face. Then I heard him stammer, shaking his head, You're just stressed out, seeing things. Why would she be following you? His reaction only made me more certain he knew something. But he was already showing me the door. All right, I have a morning meeting. You go home and get some rest. I won't dock your pay for these few days. With that, he left the office. For some reason, an overwhelming urge to uncover the truth washed over me. If I couldn't get answers from my boss, I'd find them somewhere else. If I didn't figure this out, I was sure this woman wouldn't let me go. With that resolve, I found a sliver of courage. I had nowhere else to go anyway. I decided to head back to the dorm, get some sleep while it was still daylight, and figure out a plan when I woke up. Even knowing she was with me, I must have been exhausted because I fell asleep almost as soon as I got back to my room. And once again, I was pulled into a nightmare. In the dream, I was following the woman down a village road. The road was lined with rows upon rows of tombstones. It was Cemetery Road. She led me through the graveyard, heading in the direction of Y Village. We walked and walked until we reached the same patch of woods where she always got off the bus. Even though I was in a dream, and I knew I was dreaming, my limbs felt as heavy as lead. I was completely exhausted. My mind was on the verge of breaking. I was terrified, but I couldn't even scream. I followed her to a small, raised mound of earth. Like a puppet on a string, I numbly began to dig at the dirt with my bare hands. Slowly, the mound was cleared away, revealing a woman's corpse. It was so decomposed I couldn't make out her features, but I knew, with absolute certainty, that this was the body of the woman who had led me here. Come, stay with me. Suddenly, she whispered in my ear. I stiffly turned my head and came face to face with a pair of bulging, dead eyes. I thought I was going to lose my mind. I screamed and shot up in bed, waking from the dream. I was soaked in sweat, as if I'd been pulled from a river. I instinctively raised a hand to wipe my face. In the next second, I froze. My hands were covered in dirt, and a foul, rotten smell was wafting from my body. My mind went blank. A single thought flashed through my head. Did I really just go dig up a grave? I realized my legs were incredibly sore, as if I'd walked for miles. They were so heavy I could barely lift them. Was it possible? Had I really gone to those woods in my sleep? My fear reached its peak. My blood ran cold. Outside, the sky had already grown dark. The woman's words echoed in my mind. "Come, stay with me, come, stay with me," accompanied by the faint sound of a baby cooing. Terrified, I lay back down. Ignoring the dirt and the stench, I pulled the covers over my head, trying to find some small shred of security. Somehow I drifted off again. The nightmare returned. In my dream, I dazedly followed the woman back to the woods. The pit I had dug was still there, the woman's swollen body emitting waves of a putrid stench. "Come, stay with me." She leaned close to my ear, her voice a ghostly whisper. She grabbed my arm and started pulling me into the pit. I struggled with all my might, but she was impossibly strong. I couldn't break free. A moment later, she had pulled me down to lie beside her. Dirt began to rain down, covering my mouth and nose. The feeling of suffocation was overwhelming. I tried to gasp for air, but only inhaled the fishy smell of earth. I was terrified. Despair washed over me. This woman wanted a man to be buried with her. But why me? I couldn't think of anything I'd done to deserve this. I couldn't make a sound, couldn't even beg for mercy. All I could do was pray over and over in my mind. Finally, I jolted awake. Before I could even process the horror of the dream, I was hit by a stench even stronger than the night before. I looked down. My body was covered in dirt and dead leaves. Looking closer, I could see tiny scurry of black, bits of flesh. My stomach churned. I scrambled to the bathroom and started dry heaving. After emptying my stomach, I went to the sink to wash my face. As I looked up, I screamed. In the mirror, the woman stood, holding her baby, a faint, chilling smile on her face as she watched me. I completely lost it. "Who are you? Why are you haunting me?" I roared. "Go after the person who hurt you. I have nothing to do with this." I channeled my terror into rage, shouting over and over. But the woman just stared at me with those sinister eyes, saying nothing. The smile on her lips sent a deep chill through my bones. I understood. She wasn't going to let me go. She wanted me to be buried with her. In a storm of fear and despair, I didn't even bother to wash the filth off my body. I turned and tried to run for the door, but my legs were so sore I could barely move. I looked down and saw my feet were covered in blisters. Dirt and blood caked into the raw wounds, sending searing pain through me. Maybe it was the delayed shock of the pain, or maybe it was the screaming, but my fear miraculously began to subside. When I looked up again, the woman was gone. I forced myself to calm down, took a shower, changed into clean clothes, and treated my wounds before heading out. First, I needed to confirm if I had really left the dorm last night. I went to the security office, made up some excuse, and asked to see the surveillance footage. When I saw myself on the monitor, a wave of cold dread washed over me. In the footage, I was walking like a zombie. Eyes rolled back, neck twisted at an odd angle, body rigid, legs moving forward mechanically. Those rollback eyes were staring straight ahead, unblinking. I knew, instinctively, that I was looking at the woman. She was in front of me, leading me forward. The security guard saw the bizarre footage of me and shot me a terrified look. But I didn't have time to worry about him. I had just confirmed it. After I had fallen asleep last night, I had in fact gone to those woods twice. They weren't nightmares. It was all real, which meant I had really dug up the woman's corpse and laid down next to it. But who was this woman? Why was she following me? And did my boss know her? The questions swirled in my head. It wasn't until the footage showed me returning for the second time, still moving like a sleepwalker, that I snapped out of it. Without a word, I went back to my dorm. The whole time, the guard's terrified eyes never left me. But I didn't have the energy to care or to explain. I had to find a way to save myself. Otherwise, this woman was going to kill me. But what could I do? After thinking it over, I remember my high school girlfriend, Lily. Her grandmother was a spiritualist. A spiritualist, a special kind of person who could communicate with the spirit world. I used to scoff at things like that, thinking it was all just a scam, people using mysticism to trick others. But after everything that had happened, I was a believer. I no longer dared to disrespect the idea of a medium. I found Lily's number and dialed. I'd changed my number over the years, so when she answered, she sounded confused. "Who is this?" "It's me." My voice was heavy, tinged with a panic I couldn't hide. "It's Leo." "Leo?" Lily was clearly surprised. "Why are you calling me?" I told her everything that had happened over the last few days. When I finished, Lily was silent for a long time. Then she said, her voice grave, "Leo, where are you? I'll take you to my grandmother." I could hear the genuine concern in her voice. I glanced around my dorm. I didn't want to stay here a second longer. "Just give me the address. I'll come to you." "Okay." Lily sent me the address and told me to prepare one thing: a consultation fee. There was a rule among spiritualists. First the offering, then the guidance. You give the offering, and only then will the spiritualist give you guidance and help you resolve your problem. The offering itself was simple: just cash in a red envelope, to be handed over before asking for help. I went to a supermarket, bought a red envelope, and put a few $100s inside. On second thought, I also bought a few small gifts. Only then did I head to the address Lily had given me. When I arrived, Lily was already waiting for me downstairs. We hadn't seen each other in years, but I was in no mood for a reunion. I just wanted to get this over with. Lily was clearly worried about me, too. She quickly led me to her grandmother's house. By the time we reached the rural area where her grandmother lived, it was high noon. I don't know if it was my imagination, but I felt my body growing heavier and more tired. Not emotionally heavy, but physically heavy, as if something was pressing down on me. The country roads were too narrow for a car, so Lily and I got out and walked the rest of the way. As we approached an old, time-worn house, I suddenly felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The feeling of something pressing down on me was gone, and my exhaustion eased. In front of the old house stood a large incense burner. 3 sticks of incense were lit, their smoke curling into the air. As I got closer to the burner, the smoke suddenly swirled around me, enveloping me. The faint scent of sandalwood cleared my head. Just then, an old woman walked out of the house. "Granny." Lily ran up to her. This was Lily's grandmother, known to everyone as Granny Susan. Despite Lily's warm greeting, Granny Susan didn't even look at her. Her eyes were fixed on me. I opened my mouth and, following Lily's lead, said, "Granny." "Quiet." My greeting seemed to enrage her. Her face changed, and she yanked Lily behind her. Before I could react, Granny Susan pressed her palms together and muttered, "No offense intended, spirits. This old woman has no connection to this man." Then, her sharp eyes turned to me. "I have no kinship with you. You'll call me Granny Susan." "Granny Susan." I corrected myself, embarrassed, but she cut me off again. "Leave. I can't help you with your problem." With that, she started to pull Lily inside. I panicked. "Please, Granny Susan, if you can't save me, I'm a dead man." It was obvious she knew what was happening to me, and she knew how dangerous it was. She didn't want to get involved, and she certainly didn't want me to drag Lily into it. But I was out of options. I dropped to my knees with a thud. "Granny Susan, saving a life is a great deed. Please, I'm begging you, help me. I didn't want to die, especially not like this, without knowing why." Lily tugged on her grandmother's arm and whispered, "Granny, please, just help him." Granny Susan glanced at Lily, then back at me. After a long pause, she sighed. "Fine, come inside." Lily shot me a look. I understood immediately and quickly pulled out the red envelope. "Granny Susan, please accept this." Granny Susan hesitated for a moment before taking it. There was a code among her kind. Once you accept the offering and let someone into your home, you've established a karmic bond. Once that bond is formed, you have to provide guidance or you'll suffer the consequences yourself. Seeing her take it, I was overjoyed. I scrambled to my feet and followed them inside. The old house was cramped. A single yellow bulb lit the living room. To the right was an altar to the Bodhisattva Guanyin. The air was thick with the smell of incense, creating an atmosphere that was both solemn and strangely reassuring. Granny Susan walked to the altar and pointed to a peachwood chair. "Sit." I did as I was told, sitting down nervously. In front of me was the statue of Guanyin. The dim red light illuminated the statue. On either side hung yellow talismans and red lanterns, creating an eerie yet comforting scene. It was a strange contradiction. I didn't have time to dwell on it. Granny Susan circled me twice, then shook her head and sighed. "Difficult. This is very difficult." "What's difficult?" I asked anxiously. "Granny Susan, you have to help me find a way." Granny Susan spoke slowly. "You came too late. This spirit's resentment is strong. Her obsession is deep, and she already has several lives on her hands. She has a karmic bond with you. To save your life, we must first break that bond." I was completely lost. How do I break it? And how did I even get a karmic bond with her? I didn't know anything. Granny Susan went to the altar, lit another stick of incense, and bowed. Cause and effect are intertwined. She is your cause, you are her effect. But her cause is not you. To break the bond, you must trace it back to its source. It seems someone wants to harm you. The more she talked, the more confused I got. Cause, effect, tracing it back to the source? Someone wants to harm me? What did that mean? I hadn't noticed anything. Seeing my confusion, Granny Susan explained. In other words, to save yourself, you need to find the reason for her obsession and resentment, the original cause. Once that cause is resolved, her resentment will fade, and she will no longer be fixated on you, the effect. Finally, I understood. I had to find out why this woman couldn't move on. But how was I supposed to do that? Just ask her? And who was trying to harm me? My mind was a mess. Granny Susan continued, "I will draw a sigil on you with cinnabar. It can protect you for one day. If you cannot find her cause by tonight, tomorrow she will come to claim her effect." On the way back, it suddenly hit me that Granny Susan had said the woman had several lives on her hands. I also remembered my boss saying several other night drivers had encountered her. How had I not heard anything about this? A suspicion started to form, and I decided to go straight back to the company and ask some questions. Granny Susan, however, seemed oblivious to my despair. She took out some cinnabar and continued, "A cinnabar sigil can ward off one fatal blow for you. Where you met her is where you must find the cause." Her words gave me a small thread of hope. The woman had stopped my bus twice at the fork on Cemetery Road, and she had gotten off both times in that same patch of woods. That meant those two places were important. Did that mean I had to go back to Cemetery Road and those woods tonight? Just then, Granny Susan told me to roll up my sleeve. With the cinnabar, she began to draw a complex sigil on my arm, stroke by stroke. The strange thing was, as she finished the last stroke, the sigil seemed to sink into my skin, disappearing completely, leaving my arm looking perfectly normal. It was incredible. As a lifelong materialist, my entire worldview had been turned upside down. Before I left, Granny Susan gave me one last warning. "Remember, tomorrow, at sunrise, your time is up." Then, she started to push me out the door. I quickly grabbed the door frame. "What if I don't see her tonight?" "That will be the best outcome," she said. "If she doesn't appear tonight, you will never see her again." Then she pushed me out. Lily had wanted to see me off, but Granny Susan made her stay. On the way back, I rushed to the company depot. I found the woman at the front desk and asked her for the recent night shift schedules. I tracked down the names of the drivers from the past month. There were 6 of them. I checked the records and saw they had all quit. I asked the HR woman about it, and she confirmed they had all left the company. A sense of dread washed over me. I used the records to find their phone numbers and started calling. The answer I got was the same for all 6. They were dead. Hearing this, my heart sank. Tonight was my last chance. Either I resolved her cause, or I would meet my end. But how was I supposed to find the cause? Just go back to Cemetery Road and the woods? No, wait. I suddenly realized something I had overlooked. The bus itself. Maybe the bus was also a key part of this. Why else would my boss be so evasive? Why would he know something but refuse to tell me? With this thought, I made my decision. I was driving tonight. Back at the depot, I went straight to the boss's office. "I'm coming in to drive my shift tonight." "What?" My boss was shocked. "Leo, don't force yourself. I can put you on the day shift. I'm not forcing myself. I said, I'll be here on time for my shift. I'm going to get some rest now. Tonight was going to be a battle. I needed to be well rested. When I got back to my dorm, maybe because of the sigil, I slept soundly. I woke up to darkness. Looking out at the black night, I felt a sense of tragic purpose. It felt like death was closing in on me, and no matter where I ran, there was no escape. But I wasn't going to go down without a fight. I had to face this head on. Granny Susan said tonight was my last chance. Finally, it was time for my shift. When the day shift driver handed over the bus, he gave me a long, meaningful look. You still have the guts to drive a night shift? You're a brave man. His words only confirmed my suspicion that everyone at the depot knew what was going on, but no one would talk about it. I held back my anger and said coldly, "What's there to be afraid of? Only people with a guilty conscience should be afraid of ghosts knocking at their door." Just as I expected, the driver's face paled. He didn't say another word and hurried away. I saw the fear on his face. I took a deep breath, climbed into the driver's seat, and started the bus that had led me into this abyss, heading toward that fateful cemetery road. As I pressed the accelerator, I realized my legs were weak. I was terrified, more so than ever before. The bus rumbled to life. Tonight, there was no moon. The night was pitch black, and without streetlights, Cemetery Road looked even more sinister and terrifying. "Please," I begged silently. "Don't be there. Let this be the end of it. We have no quarrel. Why do you keep tormenting me?" I repeated it over and over in my mind. Ahead was the fork in the road. As soon as I turned left, she might appear. I prayed and prayed. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, and beads of cold sweat formed on my forehead. My heart was in my throat as I stared intently at the road ahead. Fear spread through me, and despair closed in. Finally, I flicked on the turn signal. I turned left. The road was empty. Yes, I was ecstatic. The woman wasn't there. The bus slowly passed the intersection and continued forward. She still hadn't appeared. I let out a long sigh of relief. If I could just get past the woods safely, this would all be over. Just then, I felt a blast of freezing wind. A bone-chilling cold swept over me, and goosebumps erupted on my skin. Then a sharp, burning pain shot through the arm with the sigil. It felt like the spot was being scorched, and I thought I could see a wisp of black smoke rising from it. The instant the smoke vanished, the summer night turned into a harsh winter. I could feel my blood turning to ice, my limbs going numb. I was shivering uncontrollably. Fighting back the terror, I shakily glanced at the rearview mirror. A bloodless face suddenly lunged out from the mirror, its eyes bulging, its mouth stretched into a grotesque, sinister grin. "Come, stay with me." Her voice trailed off, hollow and distant, like a summons from hell itself. I couldn't control my screams anymore. The steering wheel was no longer in my control. Some unseen force was pulling it, forcing the bus to swerve left, straight into the woods. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The bus plowed through several trees before finally coming to a stop. I felt a sharp pain in my forehead, and then everything went dark. Before I slipped into unconsciousness, I had one last thought. It's all over. The world spun, and then, with a lurch, I found myself standing in the middle of the road. In front of me, a bus was speeding toward me, its high beams blinding. Bam! I was thrown through the air before I could even react. But I felt no pain. The scene shifted again. I was standing on the side of the road, at the fork just before Cemetery Road. The bus was still there, its high beams illuminating the scene in front of it. A woman, holding a baby, lay on the ground, covered in blood. The baby's cries echoed in the night, bouncing off the trees in the nearby woods. The bus door opened, and a man got out. I could almost smell the alcohol on him. As the man got closer, I saw his face. It was my boss, Charlie, and the bus. It was the same one I drove. "God damn it, you got a death wish." Charlie staggered as he walked, his words slurred. But as he got closer to the woman, a flicker of surprise and greed appeared in his eyes. "Well, hello there." Even lying on the ground, covered in blood, the woman's beauty was undeniable. Charlie drunkenly glanced around. Then, hiding the lust in his eyes, he said, I'll carry you to the bus, take you to the hospital. You're hurt pretty bad." The woman's face lit up with relief. "Please, help my baby first. He has a fever." "Okay." Charlie picked up both the woman and her child and carried them onto the bus. But the bus didn't head toward the city. It headed toward Y Village. I followed them onto the bus. As the bus drove on, the woman grew frantic. "You said you were taking me to the hospital. Why are we going this way?" Charlie's true nature finally surfaced. He stopped the bus on a remote stretch of road and walked toward her. His smile was lecherous and vile. Hith, my lucky day. You want to go to the hospital? You take care of me first, and then I'll take you." With that, he lunged at her. The sound of tearing fabric filled the bus. The woman's desperate screams mingled with the baby's cries. It was agonizing to watch, but I couldn't get any closer. I couldn't stop what was happening. "Damn it, shut up." Charlie slapped the woman across the face. Then, he pulled out a knife from somewhere and held it to the baby's mouth. "Cry, cry, cry. Let's see if you're still crying after I cut out your tongue." "No, no." My furious shout mixed with the woman's desperate scream. But Charlie's hand moved in a flash. The baby's cries stopped abruptly. What followed was the sound of desperate struggles and weeping. When he was done, Charlie dragged the woman to the nearby river. "Bitch, I'll teach you to cry. I'll teach you to scream." Cursing, he forced her head under the water. When she stopped moving, he dragged her body into the woods, dug a shallow pit, and threw her in. Then he went back to the bus, got the baby's body, and threw it in the pit with her, hastily covering them with dirt. Then he drove away. I stood there in the dark, filled with rage and a profound sense of powerlessness, having witnessed this horrific tragedy. No wonder her resentment was so deep. No wonder her obsession was so strong. A mother, desperate to get her sick child to a doctor, runs into a drunken monster and loses everything. How could she not be filled with hate? How could she not want revenge? The anger inside me boiled over. That bastard, Charlie. So that's why he was so scared. He was the murderer. The scene shifted again. I saw the woman's spirit, now a vengeful ghost, seeking out Charlie. But every time she got on the night bus, she mistook the driver for him. I saw the good luck charm hanging from the mirror glowing with a strange red light. Inside the red light, I could see a lock of hair and some fingernail clippings. I remember the HR woman giving me that charm, saying it was a gift from Charlie for my safety. So, the woman wasn't haunting us. She thought we were Charlie. He had used his own hair and nails to curse the charm, to make us his scapegoats, to trick her. I let out a roar of pure fury. The next second, my eyes snapped open. I sat up with a jolt. Then I froze. The darkness was gone. Everything around me was white. I was in a hospital. "Leo, you're awake." I numbly turned toward the voice. It was a police officer in uniform. I grabbed his arm, my voice frantic. "Officer, I need to report a murder. Someone's been killed." Seeing how agitated I was, the officer quickly called a doctor, who gave me a sedative. I slowly calmed down. The officer then explained what happened after I lost consciousness. I had been in a car accident last night. The bus had crashed into a freshly dug up mound of earth, which turned out to be a grave containing the bodies of a mother and child. DNA tests had already confirmed their identities. The medical examiner estimated the time of death to be about a month ago. The bodies showed signs of being hit by a vehicle, but the woman's cause of death was drowning, and the baby's was being buried alive. In other words, even after having its tongue cut out, the baby was still alive when it was buried. My heart ached. "The impact marks on the victims matched the bus you were driving last night," the officer explained. "So we need to take your statement." Hearing this, I said, "Including last night, I've only worked there for 3 days." The officer nodded. "I know. We've already identified the killer. Taking your statement is just a formality." It all clicked into place. Of course, Charlie was drunk that night. In his drunken rage, he would have left plenty of DNA on the woman's body. A simple DNA test would easily identify him as the killer. After giving my statement, I lay in my hospital bed, my heart filled with sorrow and a chilling sense of tragedy. Maybe her obsession wasn't for herself, but for her child. As a mother, I can't imagine the despair she must have felt that night. After I was discharged, I went back to the dorm. I looked in a mirror and saw her, standing there holding her baby. The resentment and malice in her eyes were gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace. I was no longer afraid to meet her gaze. My voice was hoarse and bitter as I said, "If only I had started this job a month sooner. If it had been me, I would have saved you both." Hearing this, the woman gave me a small, gentle smile. Then, she and her child slowly faded away. I knew she had finally found peace. A few months later, I had moved back to the city where I used to work, but I kept following the case. When I learned that Charlie had tried to use his intoxication as an excuse for a lighter sentence, the anger flared up in me all over again. That animal. But the judge rejected his appeal. He was sentenced to death, with the execution to be carried out immediately. On the day it was done, I was able to bring a bouquet of chrysanthemums to the graves of the mother and her child and tell them the good news.